today with Sunyi Dean, author of the USA bestseller, instant bestseller, The Girl with a Thousand Faces. Welcome. There has been so much hype around your book already. How is the feeling for launch month? I guess we're sitting here. It's been almost a month in the wild.
I think it's really odd because it's gets a lot of push from Tor in the US, but I think on the UK side it's a much quieter book. So it's a little bit of like double vision almost, where it's so differently positioned in different countries. It was very quiet here, but yeah, Tor has been really supportive. I was really grateful to them.
Yeah, is it Tor UK as well, or is it a different publisher for the
Oh,
UK?
totally different. It's Harper, and just they had a
Oh,
lot of big books coming out that week, and I think it just got a little bit lost in the noise.
yeah. But you had a beautiful launch event in in your hometown. I saw all of
Yeah.
the so much intent and care and love from your team in that event that was really wonderful to see on the other side.
Yeah, I know it's a bit unusual, but we wanted to combine a book launch with an engagement party, which sounded like a really smart idea on paper, but it was actually a little bit stressful in the lead up. But I think we pulled it off. It was just that way all our friends didn't have to come down twice in a month for two different parties, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it ended up being quite a big thing that we did.
I love that though. Just a way to celebrate all of the events and the big successes. Congratulations. So it's interesting that the you were saying that there's such a big traction in the US. But I've also noticed there's a lot of special editions already out there, being the Broken Binding, which I know is UK based. And then I saw there was another one, Ink and Edge, and I wasn't as familiar with that one, but it was a stunning edition of the book.
There's one in July as well that's like been hinted but not announced,
Oh,
which I think I think that'll probably be announced closer to time. But there's another smaller crate that's doing one as well that's very pretty.
I mean, but the cover, I don't know what side I'm on. The cover itself is stunning. Like right away, even when it came out for Arc and Galleys, it's a book that makes you want to pick it up for the artwork. Who is your cover artist?
So our cover artist was Lindsay Carr, and she also did, is it called Honey Eater? I think I can't remember the. It's a horror novel, and she does art. It's a little bit surreal like that. And when the cover first came in, we actually rejected it, even though it was really beautiful because it didn't look like the main character. And in the end, we went back to it because it was just so effective as a cover, and I actually changed my book to match the change the description of the ghost to be more like the cover because we thought it just worked really well.
And I think even having read the book and looking back at it led you into those more haunting moments with that imagery. And then you look at the cover and it kind of is a full circle moment of you picked it up maybe for that reason. We all judge a little bit by the cover, right?
That's
Even though we
fine.
don't
It's
want
fine to
to.
do that. I mean, a good cover tells you a lot about like what a book, what a book's like, whether it's really dark or light, or whether it's got romance, all kinds of things about it. You get so much information from covers, and I think it's important for helping you like pick something that you'll enjoy and that you'll vibe with that author or that story.
And I will say in recent launches, or maybe just because I myself feel like I am consuming more books than I have in the past, I am starting to see some cookie cutterness to covers where maybe there's only five or six templates and then I can see, the thread for each cover. And this did not feel like that at all. And again, that might be an over consumerism statement more than anything.
No, not at all. I think part of it, because I did an interview with the cover designer a while back, and he said one of the things that he often gets asked when he's designed covers is marketing people come in and say make it look like a bestseller, and what they mean is they want you to like kind of not quite copy the design style of a best-selling book so that people will associate it, with having that. So if one book comes out that has a cover and it does really well, then everyone else wants a cover in that style. So you do get, I think, there's trends like that which are a little bit curated by by marketing people. It's definitely a thing.
Yeah. With that, do the cover artists usually get a chance to read the story and get a feel for it first, or do you give them the ideas and then they make that come to life? Or is it
I
different each
mean,
time?
so everything sort of goes through your editor, and it's kind of your editor's the middleman. You tend not to deal directly with the cover artist. I think they are offered the story. Whether they have the time to read it, they probably don't in most cases. I think they probably read a synopsis or maybe a few chapters to get a sense for it. I think this lady said she read it after it came out. I think the last cover for the Book Eaters, I don't think it was really her kind of thing, to be honest. But she read a little bit and like read the synopsis to just get a feel for it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's beautiful. So kudos to them. So speaking, you brought up the book eaters. You have these two beautiful and wildly unique stories. I mean, two for two there on nothing else to base the premise of this on. What is your creative process? Are you haunted? I guess maybe is the question.
For this book, it was really, really difficult. I think I started out without a clear sense of story, which is unusual for me, just a sense of place and setting. And I think I knew that I wanted this one type of character. Like, I knew that I wanted some of the story to be set in World War II, Hong Kong, kind of the Japanese occupation. But during that time period, Kowloon Walled City wasn't really a thing. So if I wanted to have a story that featured Kowloon Walled City, I needed either a big span of time or two timelines. So that right away kind of made that decision. And then I think very early on I started building around the twist. I kind of worked out what I wanted it to be. And everything else was just trying to make it work and trying to write those two timelines to make the twist in the middle function, if that makes sense.
And you can see having read it and experienced that twist. And I would say there's almost two big twists,
Yeah.
right? Where it's that you think you've untwisted one and you find another. The intention there and the thought, like no thread left without care in that story. So that you having said that comes through very clearly in the work itself as well. You mentioned you wanted the dual timeline and also the World War II occupation. And you had this beautiful, beautiful dedication to your grandmother and the women that weren't able to tell their own stories. And this is a reflection in a fictional way, right, to them. And I will say, it definitely has sparked my interest. We don't see in the US having this is where it's taking off, right? This is where the readers are picking it up. We don't always see those pieces of it. Not that our history education is well rounded. It might be a little bit of a cultural flaw of ours, but that felt very very personal. And when you say, that's where you knew you wanted to start, was that one of the reasons? Was that dedication part of it? Or as you got to the end, you saw the threads back to your heritage and your grandmother?
I think definitely, like I find that period of history really interesting, and it's not just Americans, it's Brits as well. Like, if you meet your average English person here in school, they'll have studied like the invasion of Normandy and like
Yeah.
World War II four times, and it'll always be like the British side of it only, because every country studies its own history. And I remember when I first came to the UK, and I can't remember how we were discussing it, but I was talking about World War II with one of my flatmates, and they were like, "Was China even in the war?" And you have that moment of, okay, yeah, like 2 years before you, dude. But yeah, I did want to write about it because I find it interesting. I think it's less explored. I think China has a different relationship with the war. I think like I, I'm so out of touch with what America's like these days, but in the UK, it's still like a big thing, right? So there's like Memorial Days. You're supposed to like wear a poppy to remember all the people who died, and it's a great kind of our past victory. And I don't think China quite has that relationship because I think they just lost so many people, like 20, 30 million people. They were so beaten down, so destroyed that for them it's more like a memory of shame than a memory of victory. And I think their whole kind of a lot of the issues that China has culturally and politically come from that time period. Everything from the really bad government that they have, efficient but not very nice government to censorship, their attitude towards their own culture. I think a lot of that just comes from that post-war period.
Yeah. And so, funny enough, it's actually Memorial Day here in the
Oh,
US. That's
okay.
what why we're off today. Why I'm here on a Monday morning.
Of course,
Um,
yes.
and we do, you know, in a similar sense, we take the time to remember, but do we take time to reflect, right? Like we have the day off and we have the poppies as well, but to truly understand the depth of it. And that's what I love about reading. And we have this dialogue all the time in reader spaces of even very fictional or horror or even romance, right? You're building such, you're shortening the empathy gap, right? Because you're just like, I knew this somewhere in my brain. I knew that this was happening. I knew that it was called a world war because everybody was involved. But I kind of forgot to remember that that there's more than that, right? And there's so many other impacts. And I think the first time that that happened was in early like COVID time, right? I was reading the Kristen Hanna novels, and she was writing about France. And I loved hearing, oh, the women experience war as well, and we don't always hear that in our histories. And what happened to the women in France during that time? Oh my gosh, like of course something was happening with them. What did we think that they just sat around and waited for the men to come home? Like um, and so, all of that to say, it's so beautiful, I think, when stories can remind you that it's bigger than a headline, than one history lesson. And when we experience that in fiction, I think it's so much more powerful. So powerful.
My fellow podcaster Scott, he is a massive Kristen Hanna fan. He's always telling me about he's totally obsessed with her books. Yeah, we did an episode once where he was like, Kristen Hanna, if you're listening, you don't live that far from me. I hope that doesn't sound creepy.
But I'm a big fan. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I love she does such a great job too at the end. She'll recount where her research came from and if she had inspirations where she filled in any fictional gaps and where she took direct inspiration. But yeah, it's again all these different ways, even in fiction, right? Like I don't think there's currently a haunting in Hong Kong, except for maybe of the past, right? But with that too, so you have the book eaters, and it seems closed, right? Are we going to revisit the book eaters at all? It seems we are
Um,
done, right?
so I can't revisit it at the moment, and I think people are always a bit surprised when I say this, but basically contractually, I need to write standalones for the first three
Oh,
books, and I think that's just because Tor didn't want me to get stuck writing like the endless adventures of Devon and Hester, kind of Dresden Files style, because the first few books that you write do kind of set the tone for how the rest of your writing tends to go career wise. And I think they wanted to have that freedom where, you know, if book one didn't do well, you just try again with book two or book three. But that means that I can't actually do a sequel at present. Maybe someday, but it's definitely not book three, I'm afraid.
yeah. And that was one of the things that I had jotted down too. Is you're nailing the standalones. They're so fun, and as a reader too, you can appreciate when a story can come to a full conclusion within in one novel and not 1,500 pages later. And you're like, okay, well now I know how everybody has lived on or not. But it's interesting to hear that you contractually have the three standalones. Do you ever get the itch for a series, or in the back of your mind know a set of characters or a world you want to bring to life?
I think it's tricky. I mean, I assumed Book Eaters would be a series when I
Oh,
wrote it because that's common for fantasy. So when they said, "Oh no, we don't want you to write anymore," I was like, "That's fine. Actually, I'm really tired of this this book. I want to try something else." Probably not. I think maybe a duology or like two things that are like same world, but like they can stand alone, but they're linked at most because just just from a business side, it's really tricky at the moment. I think when you write series, there's readership fall off from book two to book three. No matter how successful the series is, that always happens. And I don't know, they're not series are not doing amazing in fantasy at the moment. They're a really hard sell. Aside from self pub, I'm not sure why. That's just how it works at the moment. But yeah, not currently. Maybe one day.
Well, we're devouring the standalones, and it is
Thank you.
nice um, to have again that closure, right? And to not feel like, oh, I have to now read five other books.
Yeah.
I tend that I'm reading almost more standalones because I'm in the middle of too many other things that are happening. Like, hold on, I've got space for a book, and I need something to happen by the. I need closure. The other thing that we talk about a little bit, the some of the trends or the appetite that is happening in the industry. And I don't know if it's on purpose, but I have noticed a little bit of a trend, maybe just in May as well, because we had the Girl with a Thousand Faces, we had The Last Contract of Isako, we had The Adventures of Amini Al Sarafi, and it's this awesome resurgence of older women, mothers, and and it's so refreshing to see that representation outside of the epilogue. And there's whole books that start at that, yeah, here was this whole life, and here's what I'm doing now. And it's beautiful. So was there intent behind the age of Mercy and her story, or is that just something that naturally came to fruition?
I like characters that are a bit older. I think I relate to them more. I remember when I was younger, reading a lot of like Wheel of Time, like everyone's like 19 and 20 because I think the rule is you always read up, isn't it? So when you're like a teenager, you want to read people who are a little bit older and that kind of thing. And I just think it's more. I think it's more interesting. I think it gives you more scope to see different sides of people. They have time to accrue a lot of mistakes and, and a lot of life experience. But younger characters can be fun. I just haven't done one yet. I think if you like kind of darker fiction, The Bone Door by Frances White has like a child main character, which is really unusual, but she does it really, really well. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, I'm enjoying the slightly older, slightly more grown up people as well. Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey, I think, had a kind of, was she like late 30s main character who was really, really dark and interesting.
And they tend to be less they're not making the dumbest choices, right? I mean, there's still some
Yeah.
poor choices that have to move the plot along, right? Like something clearly
Yeah.
has to go wrong for there to be plot. But sometimes, again, you read the teenagers and you're like, well, I know one thing that could have made this book 300 pages shorter. They would have respond or just used, full frontal lobe development, could have taken this a different direction.
Mm.
So it's interesting how the older characters can solve the problems. Even in it's still interesting, right? Like logic can still be a good plot
Mm.
device and not just let me just start waving my sword around or using brute force or however. I feel like the younger characters, right? It's almost so reactive and not so thoughtful. So with that, even though this is a horror novel, horror fiction, and when explaining it to my friends too, I'm like, it's fantasy, it's horror, it's historical fiction. It's like that nice, fun blended, throw it all in and have this wonderful smoothie in the back end. What would your pitch be outside of the back cover of it? Do you have a way you pitch it to friends and family?
I think I've just called it historical fantasy or like Chinese Gothic. I'm really glad that we didn't call it Hong Kong Gothic because it came out like the same month as Japanese Gothic. So it would have been
Oh,
a yeah, which that book's really good as well. I've been reading that lately. But yeah, I think I would just call it historical fantasy probably because I think that's the simplest thing to explain it to people so that they know it's not contemporary and it is kind of set somewhere else.
but it is haunting and atmospheric in a very beautiful way. But still, there were scenes and imagery that came through that was haunting. Is I
Thank
keep
you.
falling back on it in a great as all compliments.
Yeah, there's some really fun Chinese folklore, and I think actually you've probably encountered water ghosts before. The girl from The Ring is a type of water ghost.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's like the Japanese version, I guess. I don't know how much they differ, but she's the same kind of drowned woman, lives in a in a body of water, in a well specifically. But
And I will say too, even having um I'm a terrible reader in that I like to go in so blind. I usually don't even read the back cover. Like
that's
I'll
probably a
just be
good
like,
way.
is it? I very much take recommendations from trusted individuals. And if I read a back cover that makes me pick it up and I don't maybe get to it in a few weeks or months or however long, I don't revisit it. I'm like, ah, something told me I wanted this at one point. Um, but the twists and the hauntingness and the water ghosts were a surprise to me, and the folklore. And when we go back to the islands and we have that dual timeline, that that was a twist for me. I didn't realize we'd be doing this jump. And the beauty of I one of my dislikes is the amnesia trope. Sometimes I can really
Mm.
it'll pull me out of the story because I'm like, it can't be that bad that they don't know, or something in my I get stuck on it. But this was one of the only times that I was like, she can Mercy can remember or not remember whatever she wants. Bow, oh my gosh. Do you have a cat? Is
No,
there
I
a
don't have a
background?
cat. I've got a. Where's she gone? I've got a, Gwen. Say hello.
Oh.
Sorry, she's not very awake like most of the day. She sleeps like a cat. No, I have a sausage dog who weighs about as much as a large cat. Um, I never had cats as a child. I was quite allergic to them, but been around them, I guess. I don't know. I
Well,
find for cats, I just think about like all the things that non-cat people don't like about cats are exactly what cat people like about them, if that makes sense. Like the fact that
yeah.
they don't care about you and they're quite like self-centered and they have their own mind and they're not at all like a dog companion, you know, that is like the appeal, which I kind of understand.
Yeah, and I asked because Bao was such a true cat in my like, oh, this ghost cat. I'm like, I have one of those. Acts the same way. Only wants attention when it's their idea. No
Uh,
good.
I was just going to say they are considered bad luck traditionally. They wouldn't, you know, the fact that she has one, it's like having a demon for a pet. And apparently, like people sometimes would kill dogs to have like a ghost dog to keep away the ghost cats
Oh wow.
to try and yeah, which I think really was just killing dogs and is not very nice. But that's how they're viewed as like something you don't necessarily want around. But I thought it would be fun for her to have one anyway.
We love a good animal companion.
Yeah.
It was a nice reprieve in some of those um, haunting scenes. You also did a really, you spent a lot of time in the author's note as well. And you use the words, and I'm checking my notes here, you use authenticity over exotification of it, of the world and of the writing process. Um, and I think that's really powerful for, as the reader too, especially readers that are and look and live in worlds that I live in too, to understand the differences between the two. So is there anything else that you want to add to that brief, because you don't get that till the end
Mm.
of reading it? Anything you want to add to that or elaborate on?
Not really. I tried to be comprehensive, I guess, with just the stuff with the goddess. I guess the only thing I'd add in, which I never really talk about in the book, is why I have to say this without spoilers, don't I? Why a certain little girl has the ability to control storms, and that's because to me, I was thinking of her as like a kind of incarnation of Guan Yin, which is like, I mean, that goes really, really deep into like into older folklore. So I just kind of didn't mention it in the end. But yeah, it has that bit where it talks about the fusion of Matsu and Guan Yin cults, and Matsu was a human girl who was basically she was born with the ability to have powers over the oceans and the seas, among other things. And she could like astrally project her body, and I think that kind of idea is that the little girl on the island was another person like that, and that's why she was special. But she didn't become a goddess, and her story didn't work out. So instead, other things happened to her.
Yeah.
But there was just no way to kind of like go into that without maybe like risking stepping on toes or complicating the story even more, and it's already kind of complicated. So I just left it, and I don't think anyone noticed or, or questioned it. They're just like, yeah, she can do that thing, it's fine.
Well, it does fit in so nicely. And it's interesting that you feel that it is complicated because I agree, there's a lot of moving
Mm.
pieces, but in your writing and in your storytelling, you're you're leaving that out for us as the reader, even as readers who don't have the cultural background for the folklore. Every little piece of that was interesting. The ability to control the storms, the mythical creatures that live on the island and manifest in different ways, and the turns that were there too. That's where I was. That was my, oh, this is the rabbit hole we're going down, and I love it moment. But you did a fantastic job, and you did the same in the Book Eaters as well, of complexity without confusion. And I will say that that is appreciated on the reader side. So you did a beautiful job.
I'm glad it came out like that. I think my editor might have to take credit for that. It definitely felt complicated when I was writing it. So
That's why there's a team, right? To help
mm.
unravel some of that, or little extra details, or too many details, which I think sometimes in the fantasy world we can get stuck in the too many details. And I'm a big fan of the Witcher series. That is
Mm.
one of my favorites. And I that's probably my biggest critique, is that we've spent entire novels in that book explaining something that happened like 400 years before, just so that that one point in the character's story makes sense, the main story. And you're like, I maybe just didn't need to know about elvish history to that detail. But here we are, 8 books later. Do you have a big takeaway that you want your readers to leave with? Was there any sort of aha moments that you hope someone takes from the story?
I guess it's very similar to Book Eaters. It's just the concept that people contain multitudes. I think I think we naturally struggle with that as humans. Every so often you'll get, say, like a newspaper story, Mr. Jones of Bell Street turned out to be an axe murderer, and then they'll get comments from everyone who knew him, and they'll sit people say things like, "Oh, but he was so good at throwing barbecues, and he donated money to kittens, and he rescued school children or whatever," and all of those things are true, but also he was an axe murderer, and I think just for humans, balancing like the fact that someone can be good in some ways and bad in others is really tricky, and it's really interesting to see that. And I think for me it's really interesting to remember that everyone has that capability in them, which is why there's there's sides to Mercy that aren't very nice, and then there are sides to her that are hopefully better and more relatable. And I think for her in this story, the things that are good in the end mostly triumph, but it could have gone a different way. And I think, yeah, I think the ending will maybe, it definitely is contentious for some people, because I think a lot of people will go into it expecting kind of a big epic combat, and that's just not how the story goes. And that's okay. Because that's just, for me, that would have undermined a lot of the character. That kind of the point, she can't solve cycles of violence with more violence. At least not in her case.
And
If that makes sense. Sorry, that was very jumbled.
no, oh my gosh, no, that was. I'm not always the best with anything concise. I like all of the brain dumps. But I
Okay.
I totally agree with, it would have felt untrue to the work that had been done in Mercy's life up to that point, lives, we'll say. Um, and something I took away from it as well was how to cope when something is done to you that you don't have control, and how do you come to the other side of that when it's not anything that you did, or it's just point blank, you have to live with the choices somebody made that affected you, and you can either continue the cycle or not continue the cycle. So that was one of my, I don't know, inserting into the story, but that was a takeaway is there could have been different
Mm.
endings if she didn't take that lesson to herself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Um,
so hard to talk about it without spoilers. I'm trying to avoid all those.
um,
I'll try not to say too much, I think, because you never know when people are encountering it. But
we'll put
yeah,
spoiler
I think
warnings. There'll be flashings everywhere.
yeah, I felt when I got to the end, I was like, okay, Mercy can't keep this body. It doesn't work. Like she cannot just get away with the crime, which is what that would amount to, and that meant that the ending could kind of only go one way from there. So, but it did take me a while to work out how it needed to end because it was kind of a conundrum.
Yeah. So you didn't have her ending in the scope at all. You let the story take you there.
Yeah, I think I was so hyper focused on building the twist and building the story around it that I kind of got to the ending. I was like, oh, now what? Okay, now I have to actually think about the resolution and what I want from it, which is unusual for
My,
me. Yeah, it is unusual for me to get to that point.
I was so convinced that we were seeing the beautiful sea goddesses,
Mm.
that when that wasn't the case, I was floored. When they were the water ghosts.
Yeah.
I and I don't know if, again, maybe not reading the back cover, or just I try not to figure out twists. Like, I'm not here to use my brain cells, right? Like, I want to be surprised. I had to like put it down for a minute and be like, okay, let's go. Because the ghosts on the island, I thought, were the haunting piece.
Yeah. That's
But
fine.
I
That's
was,
that's not supposed to. And in fact, I think when people DNF the book, it's almost always because they think they know where the story is going and they don't like it and they think they have it figured out. So quite a lot of people DNF before they ever get to that point. Well, not loads like proportionally, but quite a lot of the people who DNF will abandon it before figuring out what has actually happened. And I think in some cases the twist is maybe working against the story that it's too buried a little bit, but that's just how it is. Like the alternative is it's easy to guess and then everyone's bored. So
and there were points too where the Mercy's mother, that she was hard to read. And it was hard to
mm,
read their story about her and her both of her parents, right? And the twist with dad too. And I think that was, you talked about, being more of a historical fiction. I think that is a big piece of it too, is the generational traumas of it. It's such a harsh word, but I think it fits. But that I don't always have grace in that moment where I was just mad at Mercy's mom, like the
mm.
whole time. Was that intentional? Like to portray the lack of positive parental figures?
I don't know if it was. Oh wait, is that Suyun's mother, or yeah?
Yes. Oh,
Um,
sorry. Yes,
no,
yes,
no, it's
yes.
all right. It's so easy to get them confused because I think Mercy had a mother as well in one version I wrote, and then she's just kind of like not present, and it's like the grandmother for her. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting. I think, I mean, this is like a whole tangent, but there's a big movement I find in like diaspora Asian communities to kind of like break away from families, which is not something that used to happen. You didn't used to have people going no contact or low contact, but it is much more common now than I had ever seen it when I was growing up. And like I'm very low contact with my mother, and we don't have like a great relationship. And I think there's just a very big generational shift where, yes, there is like a whole generation who are affected by poverty, by war, by hardship, by being first gen immigrants, and the survival skills that they learn to get through that are a little bit maladaptive when, times and situations change, and their children are trying to make new ways of living, which mean that there's that clash and there's that conflict. So I think it is intentional, and it was something I was thinking about a lot. Spent way too much time on Asian parents Reddit,
Oh gosh.
which is a whole thing, but it's a really fascinating, if very sad, Reddit subgroup.
I believe it. Again, it's an absence, but it felt intentional, right? So you explaining that, I think, confirmed or at least solidified some of those assumptions. So we just have a few minutes left. I'm going to totally
No
switch gears
worries.
on us. We'll go to just something fun and lighthearted. You mentioned a couple of books that you were reading that really have caught your attention. Anything else? TV, music? Like what's taking up brain space on the other side of the writing process?
I mean, shows that I've loved recently were obviously Severance, which was like a landmark show for me. I really enjoyed Pluribus, particularly for the fact that she's a writer that I know it's a bit contentious because she's kind of like down on herself, but I think there's some good explanations there for why she feels that way. But the really rude shows, we're catching up on The Boys season 3. I've discovered I really like folk horror films, so I'm watching those when I can. Maybe a really underrated show. I don't know if it even made it to the States, but there's one called The Devil's Hour, which stars Peter Capaldi. He was one of the Doctor Who doctors, the old guy. And it is actually one of the best speculative fiction shows I think I've ever seen. It is so under the radar. And the premise starts off really simple. It's about a woman who always wakes up at 3:30 a.m. every day, and she has these kind of deja vu flashbacks occasionally, and she's like working as a police officer, and she's investigating a man who seems to know crimes are going to happen before they occur. And I think by season 3, it has gone down a massive rabbit hole of speculative fiction and time travel and all kinds of alternate universe weirdness. It's fantastic. Just a little bit of a sleeper show, that one, but yeah, I really like it.
Yeah. You had mentioned there were some other some stories emerging too that also were based in folklore. So I have Japanese Gothic on my to be read, but I also read the Book of Fallen Leaves by A.S. Tamaki, and that's supposed to be a retelling of a Japanese samurai folklore. And it's going to be a trilogy, but it was very good. It's very epic fantasy. You gotta pay attention for sure. 2 feet jump in, but that was a very fun different read. I've really been enjoying the stories based on folklores that I am not familiar with, if they weren't on your radar, that were
Okay.
interesting to me.
Um, there's another one coming out in July that I've read an early copy of. It's called The Harbor of Hungry Ghosts by Eliza Chan, who's a Chinese lady from Glasgow, Scotland. So she's got an amazing accent. But she kind of like went into her book's also set in Hong Kong, but it's kind of like a bit earlier, like 1880s, I think. And she went in like a totally different direction. So she went with like the colonial side, and she really deep dives into the magic, like the talismans and the exorcisms. But she also kind of did a what happens when the British colonize Hong Kong and they bring their fairies and their fairy folklore, and it meets the Chinese folklore and what goes on there. And there's like it's like a really interesting kind of yeah, a really interesting setup, a really interesting premise, and she digs into like basically two different, completely different magic systems that are culturally entwined, and it's got a nice romance in it as well, I think. So that's a lot of fun. Very similar setting, but totally different take, in a really good way.
I love that. Yeah, I am a sucker for fairies, both I'll say like ethereal and light and wholesome, and also like the opposite end, the whole spectrum of fairies. Like, I don't know, so that's like my favorite subtrope. Very middle-aged white woman of me, but it's true that that's the case. Well, we are at the end of the time. Is there anything that you want to end with? Anything you want readers to know before we close shop?
Um, Not particularly. I guess in terms of books, I have. another one that I've written and handed in because Girl with a Thousand Faces took me 5 years, and the book that came after it took me 8 months, and I wrote it during edits for this one, and hopefully that will be out. Oh, I'm not sure. Maybe late 2027 or early 2028, but I'll have to find out soon. Yeah, I get edits back into this month theoretically, so
Any nuggets that we can get on that yet, or still under lock and
yeah.
key?
As far as I know, it's okay to talk about. It's a little bit of a step change. It's kind of science fiction, but not scary sci-fi. It's more like Station 11
Oh,
kind of meets like normal people. I know that's a really strange combination, or maybe Station 11 meets Scanner Darkly. It's set in mostly rural Texas, near future, and it's about a kind of a future where there is a pathogen, which is I know everyone runs screaming as soon as you say pathogen and disease book, but there's a pathogen which makes people feel like they're experiencing enlightenment. So it does kill you, but as you progress through the stages of the disease, you become happier. You think you're transcending to another plane of existence. You want to be sick. It feels like religious awakening. And on the other side, there's a drug which can eventually cure that sickness, but as long as you take the drug, it gives you crippling, like, ruin your life levels of depression and anxiety, and basically makes you feel like crap. And and the main character is the man who's responsible for both unleashing the disease and creating that botched drug. And basically, he has broken the world, and it's his fault. And it's what you do about it, and how he tries to fix it, and what it's like to live with those. And then there's lots of like religion and science stuff and text and religious trauma in there, I guess. But I'm not describing it very well, but I had fun writing it. I think it might be my favorite of the ones I've written.
wow. I mean, you described it in a way that makes me want to pick it up.
Thank
So
you.
I would say that was done. I'm intrigued. I'll be locked in for end of 2027, hopefully. Fingers
Okay.
crossed. And I love to hear that you're so passionate about it too. The favorite of the books so far. Do you think they all progressively became your favorite as you wrote and developed them, or
I think I liked each one. I think I'm proud of having written Book Eaters because it was written under such difficult circumstances. But I do think for me, it always had structural issues that I was never happy with. I felt like I couldn't resolve. Like, if you write the plot out as like a synopsis, it's just insane. Like, the plot is nuts for Book Eaters. Girl with a Thousand Faces, I felt like it was a lot closer to the kind of story that I wanted to tell, but there's still some things that I don't think quite worked in it for me. I think some of the point of view switches and stuff are a bit jarring. This one, I felt like it was a lot cleaner, basically, from the get go. I knew what I wanted, I knew what I wanted to do. It was much easier to write. So I think I like them more so far, but yeah, I don't know if that will continue.
yeah. Well, I'm really excited for it. I loved The Girl with a Thousand Faces. I encourage everybody to pick it up, and I'm ready to see what's
Thank
next.
you.
So thank you for the time today, Sumi. I appreciate it.
No, it's been really good. Thank you for having me. Good luck with your podcast.